All right. Well, I think that's the peak of the show. So let's jump into waiver wire. We'll start with wide receivers today. And as always, a reminder of the notable bye weeks for the pass catchers. DK Metcalf, who's been banged up. Tyler Lockett. Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was just tremendous last week.
Destroyed Pete in the League of Assholes.
So if you're riding the high of what JSN did for you, well, you're going to have to come back down as Seattle is on the bye. Same with the Packers, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Jacoby Myers, and Brock Bowers with the Raiders.
This is a brutal.
This is a tough one. And
It's a brutal week, by the way, just for people that care about me, and I assume that's only me. But David Njoku and Jackson Smith-Njigba will be on the bench this week for me when I have to face Stupid Dev.
Oh, you're done.
Stupid Dev, who's crushing our league.
You're fried.
He's in first place. I'm currently in third. You're in second. Pete.
We had a slugfest.
We had a slug
this week.
You had a brutal. And by by the way, poor Adam, producer Adam, lost by again less than a point.
Love to see it.
Audio Adam. Anyway, I got my work cut out for me with Stupid Dev. All right, but so a lot of big name wide receivers on the waiver wire. So a guy that I think is suddenly pretty interesting is Xavier Legette. Because regardless of whether it's Bryce Young or Andy Dalton under center for the Carolina Panthers, they have a semblance of a competent passing attack. And with Quentin Johnston now in Baltimore and Jonathan Mingo in Dallas, we'll get to that in a second.
That's the real thing that November 5th will be remembered for.
Exactly.
For
a fourth round pick.
Exactly. That's the biggest news of November 5th, that Jonathan Mingo now goes to the Cowboys. But in all seriousness, guys, Xavier Legette has now very quietly scored in 3 of the past 4 games. He's got a 22% target share over the last 2 weeks, at least 6 targets in both games once Quentin Johnston left the team as well. Over the last 4 weeks, by the way, he plays the Giants, and in the last month, New York allows the highest catch rate to opposing wide receivers. So I think Legette, especially with, by the way, that there's rumored that Adam Thielen could be on the block for the Panthers as well.
Feels that way.
I mean, that he doesn't make sense for the Panthers as where they are for an organization, but he certainly could provide some veteran help for a team in need. And then you've got Jalen Coker there as well. We kind of like Jalen. I'm a cokehead.
Wow.
Okay. For example, I kind of like Jalen Coker.
We can get behind that one.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Cokeheads unite.
You get him on your waivers, you could rename your fantasy team the Cokeheads.
I'm just saying. Yeah, he's had double-digit fantasy points in both games that he's seen at least 4 targets, and it feels like moving forward, this is who it's going to be in the receiving game. It's going to be Legette, Coker, and Jatavian Sanders, who's coming off a nice game. We'll talk about him when we get to tight ends. I always had a soft spot in my heart for David Moore. I always thought he never got enough run in Seattle. But they're going to go with a youth movement, rightfully so, in Carolina. And so I do think there is fantasy value to be had in Legette, Coker, and Sanders at the tight end as well. Legette available in 78% of leagues. Now, he does have a bye in 2 weeks. Giants this week, then a bye. But, Kansas City and Tampa Bay after that, all teams that they should be throwing against.
Indeed. And you mentioned whether it's going to be Andy Dalton or Bryce Young. Look, Dave Canales can pretend that there is uncertainty. Bryce Young is going to be starting this game. He has to start against the Giants. It would be insanity to go back to Andy Dalton. This isn't like the Richardson-Flacco thing where I think the Colts are fighting for a playoff spot, and I think there might be some other stuff around Richardson. But, Bryce Young, you spent the number 1 pick on the draft. He just had probably the best game of his career in terms of how he looked. You're going to bench him with the season already gone?
Bryce
Young, he has to start. So I would go forward under that assumption.
Another wide receiver on our
list. And again, good for Bryce Young.
Yeah, he looked good. He looked good against
It's the best he's really looked. The most confident he's looked in a long time.
He was in the middle of the field. He just didn't look rattled. In his first 2 starts, he looked rattled.
And he made some legit NFL pro throws. Yeah. He made some legit, okay, all right, Bryce Young. Yeah, there was a couple moments there where you were like, oh, yeah, okay, Bryce Young, there we go.
Right, why he was the number 1 overall pick. Yeah. Our next wide receiver on this list, Quentin Johnston, is 84% available. The Chargers have the Titans. Quentin Johnston, one of the many players that got a game ball from Coach Harbaugh, thanks to his 4 catches for 118 yards and a touchdown against the Browns here, Jay. Quentin Johnston's quietly really turned things around after a brutal rookie season. Yeah, he's been, the first 2 games in particular, there were really encouraging signs. He scored 4 touchdowns on the season. And now, yes, he did have the 66-yard touchdown against the Browns on a bit of a broken play, but still
completely busted coverage.
Yeah, a bit might be doing a bit of work there. But still, even outside of that, he had an additional 52 receiving yards. So the key with this is that they're just throwing the ball more. And Justin Herbert, just looks healthier. He looks like Justin Herbert. Herbert's been playing at a really high level since he came off the bye. So I think with Quentin Johnston, he's going to be in the mix to be Justin Herbert's number one wide receiver on a week-to-week basis, and that alone is enough to be rostered.
First game back from ankle injury, has a 19% target share. You like that? I think we thought this team would be so run heavy, and they're certainly more balanced and more run heavy than most teams in the NFL, but they're definitely throwing some. And we like McConkey, but other than McConkey, there's no one else in that passing offense that's demanding targets.
No.
Right? You know what I mean? They don't have a Kelsey. They don't have a tight end like Will Dissly. We like Will Dissly. Will Dissly's a nice little player, but it's not like I got to find a way to get 8 targets to Will Dissly. It's going to be QJ and Ladd McConkey. That's the passing offense. We are seeing some signs of life from Josh Palmer, who's now got 3 straight with 60 receiving yards, but on the season just has a 13% target share. Definitely feels like that's the kind of the pecking order there. It's McConkey and QJ, and then Josh Palmer is the third wide receiver. QJ out there in 84% of leagues, gets the Titans, then the Bengals and the Ravens. So nice schedule coming up, especially Bengals and Ravens, 2 teams you can pass on left and right.
Over in Jacksonville, Parker Washington taking advantage of an opportunity after Christian Kirk is lost for the season. He's 96% available, Matthew. They got the Vikings, so you could throw on a little bit. Parker Washington had 6 targets last week, and got to mention Gabe Davis also missed week 9. So this group got thin quick.
He did, but one of the reasons why Christian Kirk was on the trade block, prior to him injuring his collarbone and being out for the year, but he was widely rumored to be one of the guys to be on the move, him and Deontay Johnson. And one of the reasons why the Jaguars wanted to move on from Christian Kirk is that they're really excited about what they have from Parker Washington. Talking to some guys I know around the team, they really like what they've seen out of Parker Washington in practice, on special teams as well. He plays in the slot, obviously, but to your point, 94% route participation last week. He was out there a ton. He got 39% of the Jaguars' team air yards, and it's a nice matchup with Minnesota, who over the last 4 weeks, they allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. To the extent that any Colts pass catcher did anything against the Vikings last week, it was Josh Downs, their slot guy. I do think Parker Washington, given how much the Jaguars have to throw on a weekly basis, and the fact that, yes, Brian Thomas is going to get his, and you've got Ingram, but Parker Washington is a viable in leagues that play PPR. I wouldn't go after him in a standard league, and he's got less value in half PPR, but he's going to be their slot guy.
Ricky Pearsall also makes the cut here, guys. He's got that Bucs secondary that you could really throw on, Jay. 72% available for the rookie. 4 targets against Dallas. He did catch all 4 of them for 38 yards. He also had a carry for 39 yards. Pearsall slowly getting phased into the San Francisco offense.
Yeah. Now, I think the thing with Pearsall is that to be viable and to be a flex guy, I think he needs an injury to one of Debo, Jennings, Kittle, or McCaffrey, who we're expecting back this week, because McCaffrey is going to take a lot more passing game usage than Jordan Mason was previously. Now, the good news is that all 4 of those guys have been hurt already this year.
Yeah.
At least the good news is for Ricky Pearsall's upside. And so I think that there is scope for him to provide value. And if he can be, there are worlds where he can be the wide receiver 2 in a Kyle Shanahan offense with Brock Purdy at quarterback. So he's just one step away from that. And I mean, do you think there are worlds where he could supplant Jawan Jennings as the number 2 guy?
It's probably the plan when you look at what the Niners are dealing with, knowing that they had a lot of financial decisions in this room. They used a 1st-round pick on Ricky Pearsall. How quickly we forget. Yeah. So the question is, do they want him to do that this year, or was this a pick where they were thinking long-term? Because when Jennings gets an opportunity, he's flashed big-time ability.
He's been great. Jennings has been great, but this is an offense that was Ayuk and Kittle and Debo Samuel. So it's an offense that has supported 3 fantasy-relevant pass catchers in the past, and so could that be Debo, Jennings, and Kittle, or does Ricky Pearsall take this job over? We'll see. It's worth noting that in the 2 games since he's returned, right, he has a 16% target share. He has a 77% route participation. So he's out there a decent amount. Again, he's 4th on the list in a week where our wide receivers aren't as strong as they have been in some previous weeks. But it's a nice matchup against Tampa Bay on a short week. Tampa Bay obviously playing last night, and they give the 6th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. I think the upside of both the Niners offense and Ricky Pearsall's talent makes him worth a roster spot if he's available.
Back to the Bucs here, guys. We'll talk more about them with last night, but Sterling Shepard available in 93% of leagues. All the injuries they've dealt with, Matthew, to their pass catchers. Shepard is one of the guys getting involved now. 5 targets 48 yards against a good Kansas City defense.
Yeah, for sure. Now, no Jalen McMillan in this game either. He was a scratch just before the game. So again, no Evans, no Godwin, no Jalen McMillan. I mean, they're down to
Cade Otton.
It was Cade Otton, and look, and then there's Cade Otton. Trey Palmer was out there as well. But yeah, Sterling Shepard is somebody that's going to run a lot of routes and get a decent amount of target share, especially from the slot. I bring that up because they play the Niners this week, and the Niners allow the 5th most yards per game to slot wide receivers. And so Shepard, who last night led all Buccaneers wide receivers in both routes and target share, suddenly becomes interesting on kind of a 1-week rental basis, and we'll see what happens against the Niners. Then they're on a bye, and then after the bye, they're at the Giants, but you figure Mike Evans is back at that point, and so if you need kind of a 1-week rental, Shepard becomes, viable in a deeper league.
Yep. Our last wide receiver here, guys, Noah Brown, obviously the man famous for the Hail Mary catch, Jay, but
for eternal Commanders legend.
Yes.
Noah Brown, whatever he does the rest of his life.
Noah Brown will never pay for a meal in Washington, D.C. again.
Indeed.
But very quietly against the Giants, 6 targets, and he turns it into 5 for 60. They got the Steelers this week, and then the Eagles on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, and look, he is, of the Commanders' wide receivers, Terry McLaurin leads the team in snaps naturally, but Noah Brown is second. And he is the wide receiver, too, for Jaden Daniels, who is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, I think
absolutely.
Pretty clearly at this point. And so the matchup against Pittsburgh, we'll say, like, the Steelers' secondary isn't super scary. The pass rush is scary, but if you can evade the pass rush, it's not like these corners are terrifying. So I think it's a reasonably favorable matchup. The Commanders, by the way, inching towards being 3-point favorites over the division-leading Pittsburgh Steelers.
That's
so
crazy.
The market thinks the Commanders are real and legitimate. Which is horrifying to say, but that's right. Commanders are 7-2. It's unbelievable.
It really is.
They won 4 games last year. I understand.
Even in my wildest dreams, I didn't think we'd be. I thought we had a shot at winning 7 games this year.
You're 4-4. You're 11-6. It's unbelievable.
No, I mean it's the fact that they'd be favored against the Steelers. The game's in Washington, but still, I mean the Steelers are playing really good football, But so are my Commanders.
They'll be favored in 3 of the next 4.
Yeah.
They're at Philadelphia on a short week, so they won't be favored in that one.
Right.
But they'll be favored. They're favored against the Steelers. They'll definitely be favored against whatever's left of Dallas right now in Tennessee.
No Dak Prescott for that game in 3 weeks, which helps. They're like,
I don't know if it helps actually. We'll get to
it
that.
helps. It helps. Let's not get crazy now.
Cooper Rush propaganda.
Exactly.
Dak did finish second
in the spirit of Election Day. Cooper Rush propaganda.
Fair enough. False narrative. Right. I will say that Noah Brown. Who, by the way, could use Noah Brown? The Cowboys.
Oh boy, here I knew it was on a platter.
The Cowboys. Cowboys could use a guy like Noah Brown. He's a good wide receiver. It's unfortunate that they weren't able to acquire him. But Noah Brown, 31% target share last week. He's now had 6 targets in 3 of the last 4 games. Obviously, everyone wants to talk about the Hail Mary catch, but they've been looking for a number 2 wide receiver. At the start of the year, people thought it was going to be Jahan Dotson. He gets shipped off to Philadelphia after a bad camp. Then they think, well, maybe it's going to be Diami Brown, who had some nice moments in preseason, and they were rolling out Olamide Zaccheaus as well. But no, Noah Brown has really started to, he joins this team and has really started to find a rhythm and a connection with Jaden Daniels, the Hail Mary aside. That was a crazy play. But, he's available in 98% of leagues, and I do think the Commanders are becoming an offense that you want multiple pieces of.
To recap, Matthews' top wide receiver waiver targets for Week 10. Of course, the rookie first-rounder and Xavier Legette is at the top. He's got the Giants this week. Still available in 73% of leagues, which is surprising.
That's the Germany game, by the way. I just would like to take a moment here to apologize to Germany. I mean, that's what we're sending them. Panthers, Giants.
We send them Panthers, Giants.
Sorry, Germany.
It's not what our sport actually looks like. Yeah. Quentin Johnston against the Titans, 84% available. Parker Washington now replacing Christian Kirk. He's got the Vikings. First-rounder Ricky Pearsall against that Bucs secondary. Sterling Shepard getting some more action. He's got the 49ers. And then Noah Brown, who's become a thing for the Commanders' passing attack against the Steelers. He's 98% available. So if you're in a league of assholes situation, you might be in the Noah Brown market right now.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com. And I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.